Hello, it's Kate Stillman, and welcome back to the Yoga Healer podcast. Today I'm talking about how to thrive on a pandemonium planet, how to thrive in a post-COVID world or in a COVID world. I'm going to talk a little bit about, what I've been thinking about, what I've been noticing here in the seat of Yoga Healer in the past few months. And it's been fascinating. I've had Yoga Healer since 2001. So it's been a wild ride. And of course, just like you, I've never been through this before. And in my perspective, I find is similar to a few people and different from many. So I hope it's helpful to you. We're going to get into, tips for you, tips for your family, and just what you should maybe be tuning into and what you should maybe not be tuning into. And I'll also talk about what I see as trending or what I see as coming next. One of the parts of my natural personality is I'm a futurist. You know how our brains are oriented differently. Well, my brain is really oriented to the future, and I'm a bit more of a macro thinker than a micro thinker. Terrible with details, but tapped into bigger pictures and what's coming. I tend to create things like 10 years ahead of the marketplace, which is, until I figured out that's what I was doing, that was a bit of a problem. All right. So I found it, it's funny, like what's this word pandemic means all people, right? We have pan means all, and demos is the people, like democracy is ruled by the people. The word pandemonium was first coined by Milton to designate the capital of hell in Paradise Lost. So we've got pan, we've got the people, and then we've got the Greek for daemon or demon. And so I find this is interesting because there's a bit of a pandemonium, I think, going around where some people are literally trapped in a living hell right now, whether they're afraid or whether they're sick. So what I want to talk about is like how to empower yourself. And I know for many people, when we started learning more and more about COVID and the nature of the virus and the nature of how different, I'll say, governments responding to the threat of the virus, what we didn't hear much about was how to strengthen our immunity. So how to make ourselves more invincible to the virus. And I think for most of us on the planet right now, we're realizing that it's like, if it's not going to be this virus, it's going to be another virus. And we obviously have the capacity to manufacture viruses from genes right now. And so there's naturally occurring viruses, and then there's human-made viruses. And if we look at the future of the world, like it's not far out there to think that if, after COVID-19, like what's going to be the next one. But what I really haven't seen as an American, but I also haven't seen it too much from like the European side of news either, or from even like the World Health Organization side of news, is like how to become more invincible. And to me, that's really the opportunity right now. It's like, how do you choose your own immunity? How do you choose to strengthen your own organism? And in Ayurveda, we have 5 parts of the self that are sheathing consciousness. So you are consciousness, and you wear a body, and you have an energy body, and you have a mind for thinking, and you have intuition, and you also have bliss or joy. And when your organism on all those 5 functions is facile, is facilitated with ease, so that the flow of consciousness can move easily and fluidly throughout all 5 bodies, full permeation, decent communication, what happens is enlightened living. And in enlightened living, you have increased immunity, you have increased ease, you have increased power, you have increased intuition, so you can sense more of the direction you want to go, of what you want to tune into, of what you want to tune out of. And then instead of living in hell, in a hell that's created by fear, you're actually in heaven that's attuned to pulsating joy or bliss, or what the yogis call the Anandamaya Kosha. So all of that is a choice. It's a choice of what are we choosing? Like, are we choosing immunity? Are we choosing to strengthen our organism? Are we choosing to direct our mind, to direct our body, to direct our future? And that's what I want to talk about today. And in this process, like a lot of people are waking up, and I'm seeing this. It's pretty fascinating, like just having a global organization and a global podcast, and we use advertising as well. So we use Facebook ads in different parts of the planet. And I read a lot of the response that comes from those efforts of just asking people questions and tuning in and having course members around the world and listening to them. So both on the people that are not course members yet but are interested in this conversation, and then those that are course members, I have a finger on the pulse of some part of this conversation. And what I see and hear is that a number of people are like, really waking up right now and pivoting big time, saying, hey, this job isn't working, or this relationship isn't working, or the way I'm living my day-to-day life isn't working, or what I'm eating isn't working. And in the big pause, in the big quarantine pause that has happened and is still happening in some places, there's an invitation to find self, to return to center. And this invitation is one that increases our awareness of consciousness, increases our awareness of pulsating bliss, definitely increases awareness of intuition, which is guiding us more and more towards the bliss body, helping us see our own thinking, helping us see which emotions we're choosing. And then by choosing emotions and choosing thoughts, we choose actions, and then that determines what we experience in our body. So I see that happening, I would say, on an unprecedented level. And again, I've been doing this since 2001, so I have a little bit of experience here with leading a community and with leading a conversation. And so for me to say that I'm seeing this at unprecedented levels, it might be noteworthy to you, because if you've been experiencing that, just to know that, like, oh, you're part of that massive tide of people, which can sometimes seem really small when you're not as connected to it, when you're not involved in these conversations with other people. And because there is that momentum happening, it's nice to actually just exhale and relax yourself into that, to actually like feel that, to know that that's real, to know that your intuition is guiding you to a more connected universe, towards a potentiality, and away from fear. That's really the big opportunity right now. Like, are we oriented towards fear or potentiality? And in Ayurveda, they'd say like it's all in the realm of vata. So vata is it's wind. It's that which moves things. And when wind is agitated, when the mind and the emotions are agitated, that wind shows up as fear or anxiety. It can also show up as overwhelm or scatteredness or indecisiveness. And like indecisiveness is usually pivoting back and forth really, really, really fast between two different realities. Should I quit my job? Should I keep security? Right? And it's that indecisiveness, that like very, 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 very quick pivoting. The mind's going, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. All of that, it's all the same energy of wind. Now, organized wind that is, or movement of potentiality into reality, right? That's movement. That's vata. Va is to carry. So vata is this which is carried. It's the wind. In an organized experience of consciousness coming into form, of potentiality coming into reality, you experience the experience of potentiality, which is you are the creator, which is you can create. You can do what you want to do. It might not go the way you want it to go, but you have the ability to perceive, and you can perceive the future, and then you can step into that. I love what James Altucher, who wrote Choose Yourself years ago, he says, everyone is an entrepreneur. The only skills you need to be an entrepreneur are the ability to fail, to have ideas, to sell those ideas, to execute on them, and to be persistent, so that even as you fail, you learn and move on to the next adventure. So what we're also seeing right now in terms of the pandemonium on the planet is we're seeing those who were tied to security and certainty, really coming up against what happens when they interface, or when you interface with that belief system in a world that's actually truly uncertain. In a post-Cold War world, theorists from the military community in the U.S., but I actually think it's globally, they came up with the term VUCA, and it's an acronym for 4 words that basically describe like what happens next, like what happens, and they were coming from a place of like what happens next in terms of like defense. What do we need to be thinking about in order to create security and certainty? And what they came up was the acronym VUCA, that we're living in a world that's volatile. That's the V. U is for uncertain, C is for chaotic, and A is for ambiguous. And they wrote about this. Anyone who's been reading leadership books or even entrepreneurship books in the last 20 years has seen this word VUCA and seen it again and again and again. One of my favorite resources on this is Mastering Leadership by Adams and Anderson. Another one is their next book called Scaling Leadership, and they both deal with VUCA in like the first chapter, and write beautifully on VUCA, that like if you can orient towards that the future is volatile, uncertain, chaotic, and ambiguous, then you're actually in an empowered position. Because then when things blow up, volatility, then when things are, when certainty fails, uncertainty, when things don't go according to plan, chaos, and when something is less than clear, ambiguous, you won't be surprised. Right? You'll be prepared for it. You'll be ready for it. And B, you may have built some skills that help you deal in a VUCA world. And so what I see is those who've already chosen themselves, who've already chosen to empower their own immunity. Many people in our Yoga Healer community, in our Body Thrive community, our Body Thrive course, they've been choosing themselves for years, right? So their organism's already organized. They're already centered in themselves from the inside out. They're growing their resilience, their adaptability, for years, and their habits and their choices, et cetera. So they're just a little bit more prepared for when something like COVID-19 happens. They stay in their center, and they grow their capacity. They grow their capacity to be resilient and adaptable. They also grow their capacity to serve. And that's really what I've seen in our community, in our course member community in the last few months. And gosh, it's made me proud. I mean, really proud of like just seeing what my members are talking about on the calls, how they're doing, what they're posting in the forum, and just seeing how the adaptability is making them much more able to take advantage of shelter in place situation. We have some doctors and nurses in our community, and seeing how being in a place of potentiality and availability and strong in their own habits, there's just so much less fear. And so much more curiosity about like, what do we need to do next? How does this organization need to evolve that they might be working in, et cetera. So how do we do it, right? That's some part of the question here of like, how do you choose to take charge of your own immunity? I'm going to give you some tips. I'm going to read a little bit too from Master of You, my latest book, released by Sounds True in March of 2020, right when COVID really hit. So some basic things that I'm noticing because what I notice in myself in the last few months is massive breakthroughs. I mean, financially, my company's up 50% over where we were last year at the same time. My team has reorganized itself in a higher constellation of like just people power and wisdom. And yet overhead hasn't increased. It's so fascinating for me to like just see what's happening. Just the organization itself, because we're an online company, there's a lot of data files. There's just a ton of data and files, and like how we organize our systems to work better. We've been massively overhauling that in the last few months while growing. And it's just so fascinating for me to like, see at the reality of like what we've been up to there. So I'm going to share some things that I do daily that I know have just been a tremendous support. And then I'll get in a little bit into family and community after you taking care of yourself, of what happens when you own your own immunity. And Master of You, what happens when you master your immunity. And it doesn't mean that you're never going to get sick. It just means that your likelihood is much less, and that you get better and better and stronger and more organized as an organism day after day and year after year. Okay, so some basic stuff. Meditating twice a day. Now, I've had a meditation practice for over 20 years, and it comes and goes. Like sometimes I'm really, really into it, and sometimes I'm really not. But I noticed as quarantine was increasing globally that my draw to meditation started to skyrocket. So I was really glad that I'd already had a practice, that I'd already been through very, very serious courses and 10-day silent meditation retreats and all the like, right? Because I had the skills. but if you don't have the skills, I'm going to recommend there's an evening meditation and a morning meditation on YouTube by Joe Dispenza, Dispnza. And they're great. And so just listen to those like right before you go to sleep and right when you wake up. And I promise you will think way smarter thoughts throughout the whole day, which will lead you to take more aligned actions and then refueling your physiology with super, super healthy emotions. And I'm going to read a little bit from Master You about these healthy emotions. This is on page 18, The Paradox of Evolving and Being. Life naturally orients you towards growth, towards a bigger, brighter, and better future. This requires continual personal transformation. Yet herein lies the paradox. The highly conscious people feel the pull to become greater versions of themselves, while simultaneously feeling that they are already enough, complete, whole, healed, and fulfilled. Some call this awareness of tranquil wholeness the ground of being. Others describe it as the experience of beingness. This experience of beingness is always available if we remember to be aware of it. Wisdom traditions guide us into beingness with practices such as sitting or walking in silence, prayer, breathing, singing, and chanting. The yogis use a number of terms to describe the always available experience of the ground of being. Purna, or the fullness of being. Svatantriya, or the freedom and the unlimited expansiveness of being. And Shivaya, or the auspicious, the favorable, indicating that the experience of beingness is inherently, subtly positive. It's not neutral. By taking a moment to go inward, a person can access the experience of ease, inner fullness, and a sense of all rightness. A deep freedom of being infused with the positivity inherent in the force and intelligence of life becomes tangible. Personal evolution, or Dharma, the work of becoming, is balanced by pausing to root your awareness in beingness. If we orient ourselves only from a place of not enoughness or desiring more, we exhaust ourselves and we eclipse the joy of the ride. You are intrinsically enough as you are. More time, more money, more intimacy, more credibility, more success, without the knowledge that it's all okay, it's all already enough, or it's all good right now, creates dissatisfaction, greed, and isolation. So in Master of You, you orient yourself from the perspective that you're already whole and complete and enough, and that you are evolving. Pause for a minute to ponder the paradox, the serenity of being, and the adventure of becoming. The yogis call the game of becoming a better you, Leela. Leela describes the spirit of the game, the natural delight in creation, including your next self-invention. Notice for a moment how you feel when you take your self-mastery path playfully, knowing that there will be interesting characters and situations that arise along the path. What if you can take this all a little less seriously with a little more delight? What if in the lessons you'll learn along the way, you can see the playfulness of the divine, or a playful quality in the evolutionary force itself? Would that serve you? All right, so that's a little bit on, why we meditate, is we can tap into that wholeness, that fullness, that enoughness that's always around. It's always available. It's part of it's the essence of consciousness, right? Like that's it. So that is the underlying fabric of even that pulsating joy, of your intuition, of your mind, of your emotions, of your energy body and of your physical body. So meditating twice a day to remember that, I find it actually critical. I think in a post-COVID world. I think before it was also critical, but now it's like more critical if something could become more critical. Not sure if that's the case. Those who have been doing it all along weren't thrown. They weren't thrown by a world of uncertainty, right? Because that's part of it. It's like when you're in that experience of enoughness, you're also available. And it's this availability to your own becoming from that passage I just read, and realizing that the becoming itself is Leela. It's playful. That we're just not contracted by the negative emotions of fear and of uncertainty that more or less destroy the immune system, or they destroy your immunity. All right, so other things I've been doing regularly. A lot of this stuff I already do anyway. Exercising in the morning. So after meditating, like moving for 20 minutes, it's not optional. It's not like maybe I'll do it some of the time. I do it every day. Why? Because I want to open the intelligence of consciousness into my physical tissue of my body. So what I'm often doing is functional movement. I love this, and I'll put some links in the show notes here. There's a primordial movement channel I just love. It's called Movement Parallels Life. And the guy's name is Callan, Callan. He's on YouTube. Subscribe to that channel. It's awesome. And it gets you just back into just very organic movement. Super easy. It's therapeutic. I personally just love it. All right, sipping hot water. Yep, I got my thermos on my desk at all times. I fill it first thing in the morning, and I refill it as needed throughout the day. So sipping hot water, it decreases the stickiness in the channels. I was in a coaching call with one of my coaches who works with a scientist who's like on the level of, he's one of the advisors with Dr. Fauci in the U.S. And it was about like one of these studies it was released in May 2020 on the cell receptor sites for COVID-19, and a breakdown of like what types of receptor sites it hits, and blood pressure sites, pain management sites, and cell-to-cell adhesion sites. And so if I look at those things, like in yoga, those are all considered things that we can have control over. Like not absolute control over, but like just an enormous degree of being able to consciously impact. So if anyone's read At the 11th Hour, it's such a good book about a yogi he was raised by gurus in the Himalayas, and then he came into the US and he started the Himalayan Institute, which many of you have subscribed to or read Yoga International, which is their major publication. And this Swami Rama, who was the teacher to the author, Pandit Rajmani Tugunat, Tugunait. He's raised by yogis, right? And I mean, like literally, he was born and given to the guru, and then raised by the guru who hung out with other gurus, and he learned. It's a crazy book. It's kind of like if those of you who've read Autobiography of a Yogi, it's kind of like that, where it's just like you read these stories and you're like, whoa, that's not the way I was raised. That's amazing. And he has the ability to control a lot. And so in the United States, he meets up with these scientists, and he shows them all the things that he can control in his body, including his things like his blood pressure, things like his body temperature, things like his breathing rate, to a degree that they've never seen controlled before. Like, can you stop yourself from breathing for minutes? Can you lower and raise your blood pressure just with your mind to degrees they'd never seen before, and in many other things. And this was just like fun, like things that he was just showing how much control we can have if we align with consciousness, and if we practice through meditation, very, very deeply calming ourself down to the level of vibrating bliss, pulsating consciousness. So in any case, when I'm hearing about what scientists are finding, the more we're studying COVID-19 as a virus and cell receptors, in which cell receptor sites are picking up the virus that the virus is adhesing to, and then how it's tapping the cell's mitochondria for energy, and then it basically starts to tap the major places where there's life force, first the lungs, then the liver, right? Just sucking energy, and so that the organism becomes less and less able to fight the virus, becomes less organized and less energetic. So when I, thinking about these two things in parallel of, well, we can affect so much how strong we make our cells. And also, if you look at like cell to cell membrane and adhesiveness, like how sticky cells are to each other, the yogis have used, in Ayurveda, we use hot water to decrease the stickiness of cell membranes and even the stickiness between cells. We cleanse the blood and the plasma of the blood with dehydration, with hot water. And so the sipping hot water every 20 minutes is often prescribed, especially for people that are fighting addiction, like smokers, especially for people that are overeating, like those who are obese, where their bodies are naturally, with obesity, are naturally sticky, and with smoking, where the cells are naturally dehydrated. Because when we have that situation going on, the immunity of the cell is just so decreased. So little things like that, meditating, the stuff you all already know to do, know you should be doing. Many of you are doing it, but do you need to turn the dial up? Do you need to make your meditations way more potent? If so, use Dispenza, he's great. Exercise in the morning, tune that up so that you're awakening your organism to the life force, to oxygen, to prana. You're sipping hot water so that your cells are very, very deeply hydrated. Do intermittent fasting. And if you're hearing this and you don't have access to our intermittent fasting guide, send me an email to Kate@yogahealer, CATE @yogahealer.com, and say you want the intermittent fasting guide, and I'll send you a link. I'm also kind of doing that because I'm curious who's listening. And the other big tip, well, actually, let me go back to intermittent fasting. A lot of people went into the quarantine 15, where they started packing on pounds. And that's a term from, it's very much, I've discovered in my global community, an American term is the freshman 15. So when kids leave home and when young adults leave home to go to college or go to university, that they overeat, they gain about 15 pounds the freshman year. So the first year is called freshman year in the US. And so it's freshman 15. So the quarantine 15, it's cool because it rhymes. Same thing was happening. And if I look at the parallel there, freshmen are often anxious. They're feeling a lot of feelings. They're feeling insecure, which again is high vata, uncertainty, VUCA world, all that we talked about earlier in terms of when you're more afraid. And so even if it's subconscious fear, you're not consciously afraid, but you're just a little nervous. You're like, am I going to make friends? Am I going to fit in here? Am I going to be able to keep up with my schoolwork? Am I going to get good grades? Am I going to make the team? All those things that come up with a massive, massive change of environment came up for people with COVID, right? Am I going to have a job? Can I handle working from home with all the kids running around? Are my parents going to survive this? Am I going to survive this? Right? Where we had that massive VUCA, massive uncertainty. And so how does this all relate to quarantine 15, to intermittent fasting? So what intermittent fasting does is it's saying that you're only going to eat a couple times a day. So for most adults, it's 2, maybe 3 times a day that you're taking in calories, and you're spacing your meals so that between meals that you're actually burning calories. You're burning that which is in your blood sugar. When you exhaust the stores that are in your blood sugar, instead of just popping another morsel in your mouth, having a latte, which has calories in itself, you turn towards your fat tissue. So your body actually looks for energy then in fat tissue, and fat is a much more stable energy source. This is what enables us to actually regulate our blood sugar, is when our body starts to feed on fat instead of just chronically needing to replenish blood sugar. So one thing that a lot of people struggled with, whether it was, whether they're kids and now they're home more, or they're adults and they're not going to work anymore and they're home more, is all of a sudden food's already around and people started snacking more. Snacking was already a problem, but then snacking became more and more of a problem, which means that your blood sugar is chronically getting primed towards fight or flight mode. When you keep putting nutrients into your bloodstream, if you're not immediately burning it, what happens is it just starts to increase cell-to-cell adhesion, right? It increases the the stickiness of the cells. It increases blood pressure, like all these things that make us more susceptible to COVID, interestingly enough. And it's really interesting because I've been working with the community in Yogi Detox and in Body Thrive with the intermittent fasting habit for, I don't know, at least a decade or so. And what we do notice is actually a decrease in pain, a decrease in joint pain that happens when you run off fat. Your blood actually goes into like a self-cleaning mode, and your joints get healthier and you have less pain. You also have more lubrication in your joints because the more your body is turning to fat as a source, fat is naturally lubricating and your joints get more lubricated. Hot water helps with all that as well. So some really, really simple things. If anyone wants to read more about that stuff, it's all in Body Thrive, my first book. And the last thing, so I've mentioned 4, and my 5th tip to take care of yourself. So 1 was meditate twice a day, in the morning and at night, so you can program your mind and your feelings to the future that you want to experience. 2, exercise in the morning. 3, sip hot water. 4, do intermittent fasting. And 5 is to learn. Use this time to decide what you need to know, what you need to learn. Some of you need new skills because the marketplace is changing really quickly. Your job skills, right, may be obsolete or not if you can pivot. So what do you need to learn? What do you want to study? And, for many of us, that means it's like you need to stop watching Netflix. Like you need to really control how you are using your mind and use your mind for that which will point you to more opportunities in the future. All right, those are my 5 tips, and I've now realized that this podcast is long enough. So I'll do another show on resilience for kids, taking care of your kids, taking care of your parents, and I'll also be talking in the next few episodes around finance and the next economy. It's been super fun to grow through this, and I know a lot of people haven't, and so there's some things that I know really enabled me to grow my company through this pandemic, and I'd like to share that with y'all. All right, stay tuned. Oh, and for those who want a dream session, that's like one of the free things that we offer people as a dream session to help you align to a bigger and better and brighter future is to have someone who can actually listen from an ear of potentiality. It's a service that we provide. Just go to yogahealer.com/dream, DREAM. Yoga Healer is YOGAHEALER, yogahealer.com/dream, and have a conversation. We'll help you dream bigger. And then we also have a ton of free training. So once you talk to someone on my team, they will help point you to a free training that we can help you fulfill your dreams. All right, that's how it works. Namaste and have a great day. This is Kate Stillman signing off with the Yoga Healer Show. Spread the word.